Well, first of all, congratulations, because I hadn't heard of Vice a few years ago, and all of a sudden it seems like you're everywhere. It could be my imagination, but you certainly seem to be a content brand that has exploded in the past, maybe 3 years. And to me, as a former foreign correspondent, really very exciting to see someone take a completely new approach to news gathering and telling the news stories that have long since disappeared from the radar of the majority of the American news landscape. So having said that, I do need to ask you, and it is called TheGrill for a reason. There's a story last week that Time Warner, who owns this building, is buying a 50% stake in Vice. Can you tell us if that's correct? And I mean, I know Fox hasn't been 20% of Fox has invested already. So
I thought that's how they got me here. They called it TheGrill. I thought it was like burgers and
we grill the keynotes. That's what we do.
I like to eat the food.
We'll get you a burger, but you still get grilled.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you do any kind of deal, you're not allowed to talk about it. I don't know who's leaking what to whom, but or for what reason, but I can't talk about it. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Understood. News Corp, is it News Corp or 21st Century Fox?
21st Century.
21st Century Fox, right, which is the news, now the news company, did buy a 5% stake in Vice within the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of talk at that time because this company is all of a sudden at a $1 billion valuation, or 1.4. Okay, so I do want to ask you, because the reports last week, and again, we were unable to confirm it, except for what we learned, that there are talks going on and that it's premature, but that these reports, that the new valuation is like $2.3 billion, which I'll just share with you that my sources at Time Warner said is wildly incorrect. So I was going to ask you if you can validate that and in any way and shed some light on it.
No, I mean, look, what happens when press starts to get out there is it sort of starts to queer the deal, or people have various interests for depressing numbers or inflating numbers or what have you. What I can say is we were valued at 1.4 last year. And
what do you think the company is worth today?
Well, we were 1.4 last year. We've doubled since then. So you can do the math.
Doubled your what?
Top
your
line
revenue?
and bottom line, yeah.
Doubled your top line and your bottom line revenue?
Yeah.
Okay. So you think that supports that the company's worth double what it was last year?
Yes.
Okay. So if you were to sell a 50% stake in the company, you would do so at, we're not negotiating here, but I mean.
It feels like it.
Yeah, sorry. I haven't got a spare billion, but if I did.
Look, I mean, it depends on the deal, and deals are, look, we're not just talking to, we're talking to everybody. I mean, we continue to talk to Fox, we continue to talk to, pretty much all the major players about different deals, and, we're looking at all kinds of different things, and one of the things that we're interested in is TV, and, we're not just interested in TV here in America, we're interested in Europe and in Latin America. So we're looking at a bunch of different things and deals and valuations, because it doesn't really work that way, because some people have assets that are worth more to you, some people have assets that are worth less, so you're willing to sort of move on valuation up or down depending on what they can bring you. And
well, it's pretty extraordinary, because given the struggles of news organizations in general, I'll say newspapers, and I'll say CNN, and I'll say lots of other powerful news gathering organizations, valuations have not been going up in general. And so what I think is one of the many things that's so unique about Vice is you are truly, you are creating original, you're doing original reporting, it's original content, it's not aggregation, and it is a new way of going about it. So I would ask, I do want to like back up and sort of let's talk a little bit about where you came from if we find out exactly where you're going, but this is some big quantum leap forward you're looking to make to be, I don't know, what do you want to be with another, if you were to get hypothetically $1 billion from Time Warner, like what do you use that to become?
Time Warner. Look, I've said, you know, a lot, I've gone on the record a lot of times and said, look, we want to be the next CNN, we want to be the next MTV, we want to be the next...
Small piece of Time Warner, by the way, those guys.
Sure. But what I'm saying when I say that, those were the sort of benchmarks of the digital revolution. You know, you had MTV and music, you had CNN, you had ESPN. And for us, we look at it and we say, well, those are all very big companies, very successful companies now. But essentially they were, and MTV made it out a little bit, but you know, they were American cable success stories. And now with, you know, the internet, and I always say this is, look, if you look at the scale of YouTube, you're not going to be the next CNN, you're going to be 10 times the next CNN. You just have to get there. And so for us, you know, it's how do we get there online, how do we get there terrestrial, and how do we get there mobile? So for us, it's a three-pronged attack. Everybody is really paying attention to the terrestrial because we're the first internet company to go backwards and say, hey, let's do TV. And so I think that's a story, so people are picking up on the story. Our biggest focus is actually mobile, but...
How so? What are you serving up on mobile?
Well, you know, we've done a lot of work, and we're looking at India quite closely because we believe as goes India, so shall go the world. Why? Because they have the youngest population in the world, the dads control the broadband by and large, it's cricket, the mums control the TV, which is Bollywood, and there's all these kids with voracious appetites for content. Nobody's creating the content for them. What happened here with the PC, where it got commodified down to $99, has already happened there with cell phones, because they're all $20 pirated Chinese cell phones. So the only thing that differentiates one carrier from another is exclusive content. So it's a really great time to sort of have an auction. An auction in India means the highest price. An auction here online means the lowest price. So, you know, I think that as we travel around even our offices, our average age is around 24, you know, a lot of our kids don't have PCs anymore. They either have a tablet or just a phone in many cases.
Just a phone, yeah.
Just a phone. So we believe mobile is the holy grail. And you can definitely get video views, which are increasing because bandwidth's increasing, etc. But it's hard to sort of make money, you know, at it now. And I think that that's what we're doing a lot of experiments in, like we did in online starting in 2006.
So is the Vice show that you have on HBO, which I watch religiously, just as I watch Bill Maher religiously, so I have a religious hour on Friday night. Is that then kind of a branding piece and less of what you're focused on, really, than these other issues like serving up mobile and?
Well, I think.
Or are you using those pieces to fuel content on all your platforms?
I think HBO is interesting for us because a lot of people throw around premium content, premium, everything's premium. Nothing's premium. And for us, we said, okay, if we're going to call ourselves premium content, that content has to be good enough online to travel to HBO, which is the gold standard of TV, and do well there. And so for our first season, we were nominated for an Emmy, and we were like, okay, not only are we premium video content online, we can move that to TV and you know, win, basically. We can be premium content on TV. So for us, it's that sort of 3 screens, 1 screen. When we say premium content, it has to be good enough to be mobile, online, TV, and now the holy grail of film. So
I'm sorry, film?
Yes.
What's your plan there?
Now I got myself in trouble, didn't I?
Not yet, no.
We're doing films. We've always done films with various people.
You want to do a feature film?
We're doing more and more. We just did a feature film. We had Fishing Without Nets at Sundance, which won Best Director, right? So that's going to be distributed. But when I say film...
By the way, Fishing Without Nets as a short won our Shortlist Festival in our first year, which was 2 years ago. Fantastic.
Fantastic short, fantastic feature.
Great guys.
Great guys. Let's go home.
Yeah, but a tough film didn't perform theatrically.
Well, it hasn't been released.
Is it not? Fishing Without Nets has not been. When is that? Well,
no.
That's also. Issue.
We actually are selling it now.
Right, I'm saying that's the issue. It won 2 Sundances ago.
Okay, so Fishing Without Nets won.
Short. One
short, and then one Sundance ago, the one that just happened.
One Best Director.
The one Best Director, yeah. And since then, whatever, 3 months ago, there's been a sort of minor bidding war over rights.
Right.
So it hasn't performed well.
I wouldn't say
only because it hasn't been released.
What I'm saying is, it has. Right. But you and I both know that films that are hot, that come out of Sundance, get bought at Sundance or shortly thereafter.
We could have got bought at Sundance, but the deals weren't good enough for us, and we had a bigger deal to put it into, and that's going to be nice.
I mean, why? I mean, necessarily does it have to go theatrically? You have access to so many other platforms right now, and maybe a theater is not the right place for that movie.
Yes. It'll go to a lot of different platforms, and theatrical will be one of them.
So let's back up for a moment, because you know, it sounds like, from what I've read, and I haven't met you before, but you know that you started with somewhat humble origins as a magazine with a couple of your buddies in Canada. What was the thought behind that? What did you set out to achieve, the three of you?
Well, the original thought was get a job, because we came out of college in Canada during a recession, and then we've never really had a business plan or a plan at all. We just wanted to have a job, and we liked the magazine, and at the time there were no real national Canadian magazines, and so we wanted to be a national Canadian magazine. And then when we did that, we came down to New York, and we realized early on that we could sort of go after Spin or Rolling Stone and try to get to 1 million copies here, or we could go to like London and Berlin and Tokyo and do 100,000 copies there and go after the cool kids rather than go mass. And so that was a lot of fun. And then in 2005, Spike Jonze said to us, "You film your magazine articles, right?" And we said, yes. And then we went back to the office and said, how do we do that? We should do that. And he did the same thing with Big Brother, which became Jackass.
Oh.
And so
How did you happen to be talking to Spike Jonze?
He approached us because he does this thing where if he finds something he likes to take it apart. And so he liked Vice, and he said, who are these guys? What are they doing? And why are they doing it? And he'll do that, like, I like old people, let's go talk to Kurt Vonnegut, or he does weird things. And so we started hanging out with him and developing some film stuff with him, and then he got involved with the brand and then became our creative director.
Okay. And so he was the one who started thinking about moving to video, moving from a magazine
to
video.
Yes, he started.
And the internet did exist by 2005.
It did, but for online video, it wasn't very good.
So you started building these channels in their YouTube.
No, so YouTube, early on, they had what they called publisher deals, and they were really bad. So we decided that we would do nothing with YouTube. And then about 2 years ago, they started the original programming, YouTube Original Channels program. And so we did that with everybody else in the world. And then, because of that, so we went from 0 on YouTube within 18 months to over 1 billion video views, 9 million subs, highest engagement time, so 28 minutes on average versus 2 minutes, which is their average, highest video completion rate, all the good metrics. And so we realized, oh, that's a great thing. Now, to go to news, what did that was it was all of our news stuff performed the best. And so our audience was telling us,
they wanted.
That's what they wanted. Now this is simultaneous to people telling us young people don't care about news, they don't care about international news, they don't want long form content, et cetera, et cetera. And so we actually did the opposite, and then it turned out to be, you know, they're rabid about news.
So your mix before was more sort of a culture, arts, music?
Yeah. The news stuff performed incredibly well, so we started making more and more news, yeah.
So you didn't start, I mean, you don't come to this as somebody who's particularly I mean, you've been very critical, let's say, of traditional news organizations.
Sure.
Okay. Now you're out there trying to do that. It's very dangerous where you send people. I'm nervous for your reporters every time I'm watching one of those shows, and I've been in high-risk zones, and those are very, very dangerous places. And I know that you can dramatize that, and you can make things seem dangerous. They're dangerous. I'm not wrong, I'm sure. So, how do you sort of conceptually approach it? We just want to go to the most remote, unreachable places and just do the stories. Which, by the way, I should say, like, those were the stories when I was a young reporter starting out in my 20s and working for Reuters. Interested me, one of my first stories was like the garbage people of Cairo. I did that story before I worked for anybody as a freelancer, and so I could easily see like one of your guys hanging out with the garbage people of Cairo who live on these smoking heaps of trash. There's many countries where that culture exists, but it seems like that's the kind of thing that your reporters go after every single time.
Well, I think if you're a young reporter, there's nothing more sexy than, you know, foreign correspondent stuff. And
if you like that kind of thing.
Yeah, yes. Well, and there's an increasing number of young people that do. And, you know, we don't try to go to the most remote or dangerous places. It's just where a lot of the stories are happening. You know, we just sent a crew to Iraq. The reason why we're going there is because that story is important. But look.
Well, you went to North Korea.
Sure. We went to North Korea a number of times.
Right. Because?
We like dancing. I mean, I don't know why. North Korea is the Holy Grail. It's, you know, nobody can get in. Every news agency wants to get in and nobody can. I mean, of course you want to go to North Korea. It's the craziest place on earth, the Hermit Kingdom, and they want to nuke us. Why wouldn't you want to go there?
Okay. Yeah, okay, so, but it does seem like that. I mean, by the way, as a template for programming a news show, it's very brilliant. It just seems, it seems dangerous. But is that, which is fine, that's your choice, and of course you're finding, what's great is you're finding the stories that nobody else is telling, and that the researchers will tell every news organization nobody wants to hear anyway.
I mean, dangerous, if you want to have danger and North Korea in the same sentence, I'll give you an example of us versus mainstream media and danger and North Korea in one anecdote. How about that? So I went to North Korea twice, did 2 documentaries, and am therefore banned from North Korea because I was harshly critical of the regime. But because I've been there so often, I figured out a few things, and one of those things was that they hate America. They're still at war with America, but they love basketball. And they especially love the Chicago Bulls. So we said a way of safely getting in is getting the government to invite you in, and you bring crews. And you know, Rodman was there for 2 days. We were there for 2 weeks. We ended up meeting Kim Jong-un, et cetera, et cetera. And we got what we wanted, which was a never before seen look. Because I've done 2 documentaries in North Korea. They're variations of the exact same documentary that everybody else had done hitherto, because they only let you do that. So you can't have a different kind of documentary because you just can't do anything. So, you know, we got a different look at North Korea. The next week, a school class was detained because 2 BBC reporters, that venerable old institution, snuck in a class of school children behind their skirts, if you will, and got caught, and jeopardized that whole class. I played by the rules, BBC hid behind school kids, and then they'll look down their nose at me and say, oh, that stunt journalist or that danger journalist. If that's the way that they want to do it, they can have it. You know, I don't want to be like them, and I don't want to do what they do.
Well, what is your philosophy of news? I mean, how do you decide what's a story, for example?
Well, that's a good question. I think that, A, we have a problem in this country especially, but, you know, in the world, that, you know, 4 media companies control most media. They're all beholden, or addicted to anyway, the news cycle, because the news cycle does their marketing for them. So if this story goes over here, then everybody goes over here. If it goes over there, then everybody goes over there. Nobody is following the other stories that are ongoing because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses on the news cycle. If you look at Iraq, for example, it was the #1 thing in the news until we pull out, and now we've completely destroyed a country where there's more people being killed in Iraq today than during the war, during the height of the war.
And Al-Qaeda's moving in.
Yeah, and Al-Qaeda. It's a complete disaster. And so, you know, we go in before the news cycle, but we go in after the news cycle. We say, hey, this story didn't go away just because we pulled out. So, you know, how do we pick stories? We pick stories that are ongoing. We pick stories that are interesting. We pick stories that have, you know, international or even American repercussions. I mean, we pick stories the same way everybody else would pick a story. The thing that they don't do is they don't have boots on the ground because it's expensive, and we do.
What do you mean you have boots on the ground? You fly boots in on the ground and then you leave?
No, we have 34 offices around the world, all with production capabilities. We have 5,000 contributors. So I know the numbers that CNN and that NBC and ABC have offices around the world, or bureaus, and those are dramatically shrinking. Same thing with New York Times, and we're rapidly expanding. So we have boots on the ground in those countries.
These are freelancers. When we say contributors, these are people who you...
Some are freelancers, some are full-time.
5,000.
5,000 contributors, yeah, the contributors are freelancers. We have 1,600 full-time.
Staff.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that I would challenge you on is, that as vice, which by the way is, you know, maybe neither here nor there, but it's easier to pick stories when you don't have to put on a nightly news show and meet ratings expectations. And I really, far be it for me to justify the American news machine's lack of interest in foreign news, but they do have a business to run. And you have the benefit of being able to parachute in, parachute out. You've got a show on HBO once a week. You can put up content when you want it. A lot of your stories, you can look at them anytime over a 3-month period of time. And I know that my kids that look at Vice do, and they all of a sudden they discovered, oh my God, Mom, look what's going on in Liberia. And it's like, well, yeah, that was from 3 months ago, you know. So I guess the question is, what happens if you do aspire to be CNN or Time Warner? At some point, you have to meet those same metrics and criterion challenges that that a CNN faces every day.
Sure. I'm not saying we don't. I mean, we don't do a half-hour show on HBO every week. We do a 24-hour news network called Vice News, and then out of that comes the HBO show, out of that comes different stuff. We're already programmed. We have 30 crews shooting at any given time all around the world for news. We're already doing it. And I think that people think, you know, oh, well, you're going to have ratings. What are ratings? Ratings are people watching. Well, we have to have people watching online, otherwise we don't make any money. If you don't have any ratings on TV, you don't make any money. It's the same thing. It's people watching your shows. I don't see why there's any difference there. The only difference is you can pinpoint exactly how many people are watching and when online, and TV is a shotgun, you know, racket run by, you know, people who have convinced advertisers that they can actually pick you know, a Nielsen rating, which everybody knows is garbage.
Oh, what are you selling?
Love.
Okay, well, that's not...
What does everybody sell? I mean, what we sell is engagement. What we sell is, look, everybody wants Gen Y, and they can't figure out why nobody gives a shit, you know, in Gen Y about their brands or products anymore. And the reason why is because you can't have a 30-second spot on, you know, some, you know, TV show that's on free to air, and everybody's going to tune in and watch. Oh, this is sort of this watered down crap made for everybody, and we're going to put a 30-second spot to sell a Ford. And they go, I don't understand why nobody's buying Fords anymore. Well, I'll tell you why. Is because they don't live on that platform. They don't live on that medium, and they don't like 30-second spots because they've been marketed to ever since they were kids. So unless you tell them a story that's a little bit more engaging and interesting, rather than here's a sexy girl driving the car, it's just not going to work. So what do? Is we create content that people like. We're in the same game as everybody else, getting a big audience for that. And then if you have a big audience, and naturally brands want to be next to that heat, and they say, hey, can I please give you money so that I can show my car? And we say, great, but if you are going to show your car, you should show a car that is a hybrid, or that, you know, it has a great, you know, computer interaction system, or whatever it is. And that's the future of media. So
Are you saying that you're turning down advertising from car companies that are not environmentally correct? I'm not sure what you mean.
We're saying that what we would do is say, unless you tell a story that engages passion points with young people, you're not going to sell cars to that generation. You can sell cars to other people.
What are Vice's revenues today?
$1 million.
What are, seriously?
I like you because you're the only one who got that joke. I don't know, we really don't talk about revenues. I did a Bloomberg thing where I did talk about revenues, so I'm just trying to think, so I don't, no, well, I mean, I always get in trouble because I talk too much when I'm grilled, and I let out stuff that's forward. You can do past but not forward. But we'll do about 500 this year, and we're
$500 million?
Yeah, top line. And we're shooting for double that next year, which is the hard one.
Double that next year? How are you going to do that?
A lot of shoe shines.
It's advertising, right? I mean, that's your revenue?
Well, yes, but the biggest change in our revenue model has come from, we create so much content now that we're licensing. So we license, for example, the mobile in India, but now we're licensing to a lot of TV channels around the world, because as sort of TV quality has to go up, acquisition budgets have gone down, right? So it's this catch-22. And one of the only, you know, outlets that can provide lots of TV programming, because all they are looking for really is stuff to put between the ads, then we have the added bonus of pulling younger viewers back to TV.
What do you think happened that Vice sort of made this quantum leap, going back to what I asked you in the very beginning, and you say you've never had a business plan and you never put anything down on paper, which of course I believe you, but it is hard to believe since you've grown.
Well, it changes see, the thing is I don't believe in them, because it's sort of like everyone does a business plan with a hockey stick in it, and you sit there and say, nobody can sit there and look in a crystal ball and say, this is what my business plan is going to be. In 2008, the #1 selling car in America was the Humvee in the SUV category. In 2009, it was the Prius. And so if you look at it, you say, okay, you know, who's going to put that in their business plan? So I didn't know until I went to MIP and had everybody lined up out the door trying to buy everything we've ever made, that we were gonna sort of change our business in any way to do TV. And when we realized how much money was to be made, and by the way, it's an ad for your brand.
International buyers are lined up to buy what you had just online at that point and not on television?
Correct.
Okay.
And so
this is like after you went to after the Dennis Rodman thing. I mean, that was kind of like the sea change for you, pretty much. Yeah.
That wasn't the catalyst, but we'll leave that in there for now. But yeah, I think it was showing we could do stuff like the HBO show, and we could package things and all that stuff. So that's a big change for us. And then we came back and said, oh, you know, what's our TV strategy in that? Do we just sell TV to the highest bidder and make a big margin, which is nice? Or do we want to look and see, okay, are there blocks to be had? Are there JVs to make? Are there networks to buy, et cetera, et cetera? So that's why, you know, we sort of are looking at that, because we have our online plan for the next, you know, little bit, and then we have our mobile plan, and then now we have a TV plan.
If you could be, I mean, I think a lot of us looked at that news about Time Warner and thought, I'm wondering if Vice would just be sort of the plug and play for HLN, just replace HLN, because HLN's been struggling to find a new strategy. CNN has been too. Is that something that would appeal to you? You could just basically have that slot on the dial of pretty much all American homes?
A lot of things appeal to me. I like pizza and hats, dandelions.
Come on.
You want an easier question?
Sure.
Yeah, no.
Look, I just can't talk about it. Like, it's
No,
like.
well, I'm not asking about whether the deal will happen. Obviously, you can't sit here and say whether it's going to happen or not, but is that...
Am I interested in television networks that have almost full penetration into the market? Yes, I am interested in those.
Yeah, well, okay. There are a number of those. That's not the only one.
Sure.
But that's
That's why we talk to everybody.
Okay, that's fine. Where do you find reporters?
So, that's a good question. Because so how it worked when we expanded the magazine is we had the office, which would have full-time staff, much like any other magazine. We didn't invent this. And you'd have your photographers and writers, and they would be contributors. And then as somebody came up as a great photographer or a great writer or whatever, that you would hire them, try to lock them in full-time. The exact same thing is happening now. So we have these 5,000 contributors around the world with our 34 offices that sort of have these concentric circles around them. And as somebody comes up, and a lot of them are predators, you know, a lot of them are sort of, you know, predator. It's like a producer, host, editor. So they just have a camera and they do everything soup to nuts.
I didn't know that word. That's so interesting. Okay.
And so...
Predator.
Yeah.
Producer, reporter,
it's also kind
editor.
of like,
yeah,
like,
very nicey.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they come up, and as they come up, and this just happened the other day with us, and we'll see a dispatch and go, wow, this person is amazing, and their story is great, and they're great on camera. Hey, why don't you come, you know, to the mothership and you know, do more? And we put them on full time, et cetera, et cetera. So we kind of have a never-ending, you know, AAA squad out there, always auditioning. So in answer to your question, we don't necessarily pick them as much as they percolate up, you know.
Interesting. I'd like to open it up because I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions of Shane.
I don't know if I'm allowed to pick.
Okay. He's got the mic, so then he'll go and then you right after, sir.
I'm curious when you said, that's loud, CNN, MTV, as you're trying to build that but bigger, all of those companies had a very specific focus. You guys have new verticals every 6 months. Is there a limit in terms of what Vice will do, or is it anything and everything?
Well, that's a good question. Vice was an omnibus, right? And what we found was that some people really liked us for news, so they'd come in and watch news. Those people hated it when we did Poo Poo Caca and the Bum Bums, or fashion, or, you know, travel, or whatever it is. And then the food people hated the news stuff, and the music people hated everybody else. And, you know, when you look at Gen Y, 18 to 34 is a pretty broad spectrum, and the sort of music skews younger, and the news skews older, and all this stuff. So we said, well, rather than try to be all things for all people on Vice, why don't we start verticalizing them out and creating a sort of more pure content experience. And, you know, quite frankly, it makes it easier to sort of slice and dice to sponsor or advertise for things as well. And our growth has been exponential because of that. So what we're going to do is keep on pushing our existing verticals. And what we've even found, like for example, Noisy is a music vertical, right? But EDM is such a huge thing that the Thump came out of Noisy, which is our EDM vertical. So within verticals, you have new verticals coming out. And news is so big, you're going to have separate verticals coming out of news, environmental stuff.
How many readers would you say are users? Just to add that, would you say you've got right
How many
now?
users?
Readers, users. I mean, online we say users. But
It's, you know, it's a great question because it used to be that everybody really cared about O&O. O&O, you have to own everything and you have to, you know, and I think what YouTube and HBO and all this TV stuff has taught us is it doesn't matter. None of that stuff matters. It matters how many eyeballs you have and if you can monetize those eyeballs. So when you look at O&O numbers, you say, okay, well, look at, I don't know, anybody, I don't want to say things, I'm going to get people pissed off at me now, but you look at somebody who just has O&O numbers and you say, okay, great, but we have those O&O numbers, then we have our YouTube numbers, then we have our TV numbers globally, then we have our foreign, like for example, non-YouTube, like Yuko and Todo. We're doing as many video views on Yuko and Todo that we're doing on YouTube. So the answer to the question is very difficult to answer, but you know, between us, TV, our offline stuff, and advice, you're looking at, you know, 200 plus, you know, video views a month.
200 million streams a month?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah.
That's big. Okay.
Which doesn't include TV, but sure.
That does not include TV?
No.
Do we know the ratings for the HBO show?
Yes.
I don't know off the top of my head.
We average 3.2 million an episode.
Episode? That's
For the week.
the week, yeah, the +7. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, sir.
I only became aware of Vice because I'm a Bill Maher fan and I started watching the show in the last cycle. And obviously that's a big explosive area for your company's growth. In these other verticals, as you look at continuing to expand and grow at the same kind of scale, I assume, music and other lifestyle verticals, is the challenge of scaling there and owning the content and producing the content different than it is for news, where it's a reporter, a predator? In the other cases, you're having to work with partners, having to work with artists and their rights and all of that kind of stuff. Could you speak to how the company navigates those different, unique?
Yeah, I mean, every vertical or every, you know, content offering has its own unique business issues, problems. You know, music is definitely, you know, rights. And luckily, we work with a lot of the artists already, so that helps us. But then you have to work with the labels, and labels have their relationship with Vivo in a lot of cases, et cetera, et cetera. It's definitely different to do music than news. I mean, music is probably a little bit easier because people have sort of, they know the three routes you can go, kind of thing, you know, the three channels you can go to. We're growing our music offerings by doing a lot more discovery as well. There's a ton of music out there. You know, the majority of music channels are Beyonce and, you know, Kanye and, you know, all the big stars. Yet the actual passion of most of young people in Gen Y are sort of smaller, you know, discovering a band, getting on the band, rising that band up, etc. So they feel part of it, part of something new. And so that's where we've had some success with Noisy. And I think with EDM, that's a whole nother beast, and I can tell you that I'm not going to even go near it because I'm not the demo. And we have very young people who do it for us, and it's a whole different thing and a whole different language all unto itself. So that has its own problems that I couldn't tell you what they were, but some of them would be drugs, and the other would be they wear funny clothes.
Do you still have time to go out and reporting on stories? Because I don't know how old the pieces are that I've seen, for example, these in TheGrill now that your business is growing, it's a global business, and
Yeah.
you've got some serious money in there.
The good thing about running your own business is you get to do what the hell you want. And I get to do half my life is business, and the other half I get to do content. And because I believe that A, I'm never going to send somebody to somewhere I'm not going to go, I take a lot of those stories. And B, I think, you know, if you're going to make cars, you better love cars. If you're going to make pens, you better really, pens should keep you awake at night, you know? And I love content. So I love making content. And because of that, I can sit in an edit suite with editors and talk about stuff, and I can be out on shoots with cameramen and talk about stuff, and we can say, hey, you know, it would be better if we shot this differently, or if we got a new camera, or if we did this. And you can actually stay ahead of the game a lot better when you know what it is you're talking about. And I think that there's a lot of companies today where you have a bunch of engineers come out of school, and then an MBA guy come, and we'll put them together, and the MBA guy will be a master of the university, engineers will come up with an algorithm. And it's like, okay, well, for us, we make content, and we better be passionate about the content that we make and know how to make content, otherwise I shouldn't be doing my job.
So you intend to stay involved in
Yeah.
content. Any other questions? Yeah.
This guy is just on fire over here.
That's one of our...
I'm curious. Vice,
Lucas.
in terms of journalism, is almost all video, or that's the biggest part of your business. Are there print outlets that you feel have mastered or effectively do video journalism?
No. I mean, the New York Times have done the integration things that are really good. Was video and pictures, you know, it's like the avalanche and all that stuff. Snowfall. But they do like 4, you know, so they've done a good job, but you need 4,000. So they have had a hard time scaling. I know the Guardian's trying to do more video. I'm just trying to think. You know, there's a few things here and there that I've said, yeah, you know, that's pretty good. But I think where people fall down generally is the scale. I mean, really to do a lot of this stuff, you need to look at 2,500, 3,000 hours a year, and that's a lot of stuff. And
look at, I mean, I think the Skyfall was a New York Times project generated internally. They're not looking at outside projects coming to them.
No, well, what they're looking at is integrating video, pictures, text, all these things. What I'm saying is, to be dangerous in video, you need to be at 2,000, 3,000 hours a year, not 2 minutes.
Oh, well, very hard to create great news video at that, if you're not a video company, but you know.
Yeah, well, the question was, has anyone done it? And the answer is not really.
Really, not really. Okay, I mean, I also am curious, what's your view of is Vice going to stay in print, or are you just looking to be video and then increasingly mobile?
Well, print is kind of like vinyl, you know, people like it, it's a retro. It's like the internet that you can feel.
Writing is so retro.
No, our magazine continues to grow, and it continues to grow in revenues. It continues to be a smaller part of our overall revenue, but it continues to grow. It's a flyer for the brand. In a lot of countries, we go in and we don't have to work hard to recruit because people know us through the magazine, and they love, you know, I've read it since I was a kid or whatever. So that I want to get into shooting for you or whatever it is. So it's a great flyer for the brand. It makes money. People like it. So we're not going to stop doing it, but we're not going to say, okay, let's stop doing internet and just do the mag or anything. So, but you know, we're not going to kill it.
What did you, when you started out, I mean, 10 years ago, what did you think Vice was going to be? Did you think it was going to be just a magazine, or, I mean, did you always think it was?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, it wasn't 10 years ago, it was 20 years ago, sadly, but we were just a magazine for 10 years. It took us 10 years to get to 1 million copies, and it took us 1 year to get to 10 million uniques online, so we realized, okay, there's the there's the future, A. B, you know, for the longest time, that's all we thought we would be, because that's all there was. You know, for us to be a national magazine in Canada was a tremendous win, because they had McLean's and nothing else. And I remember when we first started, the only other nationally distributed mag was a Redskins, which is a communist skinhead magazine called Rearguard. And we were like, my God, if we could only be as big as Rearguard, we'd be happy.
So given that, I mean, are you able to sort of think forward to where you might be in 10 years' time?
You know, I get shit a lot for being a megalomaniac, which is only somewhat true. But I think that if you start doing a magazine, you'll never be as big as you are in your community when you first start out. What does that mean? Well, we started in Montreal, Canada, and the kids, the punk kids in our milieu were like, Vice is cool. That means something to you because you love them and you respect them and you want their sort of, you know, accolades. And as you get bigger, that all becomes incredibly sort of nebulous, right? It doesn't affect you personally. So what affects you personally is sort of getting bigger, and money is the modern report card, so everybody's, oh, $1 billion or 10 billion, whatever. So everybody's sort of concerned with that. And I think if you're really concerned about media, or if you really love making content, or you just enjoy this shit, I think the only answer that you can say is, look, I'm gonna keep going. Until somebody stops me, I'm gonna keep going. So when I look at YouTube, and I look at Machinima and say, okay, Machinima's doing 3 or 4 million video views a month. I say, okay, imagine if that was news, and it was me, right? Then I'd be the biggest news network in the world. So why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I at least attempt to go do that? Why wouldn't I shoot for the moon? Maybe hit the stars, maybe hit the moon, but at least you do something. And it's the same thing for mobile, and it's the same thing for TV. So I'm gonna get as big as I can get. I'm gonna come and I'm gonna try to be as big as Time Warner. Because why wouldn't I? You only live once. And I think that, you know, I could be falsely sort of modest or falsely humble and say, well, I just wanna try and do what God put me on the earth to do, and I just wanna be happy. Or I can say, look, I wanna get as big as I can get. And as big as I can get is this. That's what I'm gonna go for.
Appreciate your being honest.
Thanks.
Shane brought with him a teaser for the new HBO season.
Yes.
I think. Can we show that, and then we'll all reconvene outdoors and have a drink together. And if you can, maybe you'll grab a picture with Shane on his way out, because he's flying off to some other fancy schmancy something. Okay, like, can we cue that? Do we have it? I think I sprung it on these guys.
Answer another question. Hi.
Yeah, sure, go ahead, in the meantime.
I'm just curious, as all power to you to become like the biggest you can become, do you anticipate entering into like Spanish language or the Latin market?
Sure.
Fox and all of them keep closing.
Yeah, well, so one of our biggest sort of focuses is Latin America. We have a big production office in Mexico City. We have a huge production office in Brazil, and we're in Venezuela and Argentina and Chile and Peru. In fact, one of our first editors is running LATAM for us, and he just keeps sending amazing content. And because of that, sort of our pickup here has increased with sort of you know, Latin Americans who live here, and we have the audience because a lot of them are coming from the New York of Latin America, Mexico City, for example, and we're definitely building that up, and we're just doing it because, again, we're on the ground there, and we love the stories, we love, you know, what's coming on. I think Mexico City is the new New York. I think it's absolutely fantastic what's going on there.